Not to mention they'd be annoying AF to me all the time. Also, she knows very well I can't be around Sil because she intentionally antagonizes me. And they all mocked me when I was homeless before. Besides, my current tenants are both single guys in their 30s I get along with. My mother had some sobbing excuses for a while. But she finally let it go and admitted she was just desperate. Edit, parents found out I was renting rooms out because Sil basically stalked me in some way. Then she told my parents, and then my parents contacted me. And then my mother came over to cry about it. Since then my parents haven't bothered me once about the house. So things are good for me. My parents and Dan, not so much. It turns out Sil is a far worse person than even I thought. I already knew she was a gaslighting self-victimizing drama queen. But she sank even lower. Because Dan's youngest child turned out not to be his. Yeah, you all read that correctly. Sil had an affair. Which in retrospect isn't all that surprising. And something a few people here totally called months ago. After being caught, Sil was ousted from the family. Dan just recently finished with his divorce. Which actually went in his favor since we thankfully live in an at-fault state. Dan also sued to get his name taken off the birth certificate of the youngest child, and won. Basically, after the incident where my parents tried to force me to hand over my house, things got pretty tumultuous over at their house. Sil blamed me, a lot. She was convinced somehow that I had tons of money, like I'd won the lottery or something, and that I should share the wealth. Apparently it was her idea that they come to my Christmas party, because she hoped they could all try to get on my good side. It was also her idea to make my parents and Dan try to get money from me for an apartment. So it really burst her bubble when Dan and my parents informed her of how my finances actually were. For the longest time she had Dan and my parents fully engulfed in her toxic mindset, and only fed their narcissism with her own. So her blaming me made the rest of them blame me. That is until what happened in front of the police when they tried to steal my house. That's when the downfall for Sil really started. My parents and Dan were apprehensive about coming to my Christmas party after the way I'd outed them. But Sil convinced them to just throw together a few cheap gifts from what they could get at the last minute and just show up, because he'd never throw us out once we're already there. Boy was she wrong. She gambled on that plan, and I with the complete blessings of everyone I'd invited threw her and the rest of them out. Her plan she no doubt thought was the most clever thing ever, backfired in her face spectacularly. I guess being chewed out by family at my party not only wrecked my parents' reputation even more, it actually started a wake-up call for them to eventually not listen to Sil anymore. And as I said in my last post, my parents decided on going back to church. Perhaps because last year I'd said they'd probably go to hell for their actions. I can't say that's the real reason. But you gotta admit, it would feel kinda satisfying if that was the case. Though my parents hadn't been to church in 2 decades before going back. While I don't think it's a bad idea that they're going to church, they need to understand that going doesn't just give them a do-over for all the shit they've done in the past. But I have a little faith they're at least trying, because my parents came to my house without Dan to personally apologize to me after they'd seen an animated video of my first 3 posts.